It is Thursday afternoon, shortly after 12:30 on the 30th of May 2024. My name is Pieter du Toit. I'm a journalist at News 24. I'm joined by my colleagues, our political editors Natasha, Marrian, and Dawie, Scholtz, News 24's political analyst. Today is a momentous day in South African politics. It's a day that we never thought would come. We're still waiting for the final numbers, the final figures. But News 24, a short while ago, published its first national projection, national to national, which puts the ANC deep under 50%. We are projecting that the ANC will lose its majority and come in at 42.3% rather. Natasha, Dawie, it's good seeing both of you. We've seen a lot of each other the last couple of hours. Dawie, you were here overnight. I'm trying to do a very calmed version of this talk, much calmer than we had a couple of minutes earlier. But goodness gracious, Dawie, Natasha, what a massive day. Natasha, there seems to be a fundamental reorganization of politics, and then Dawie, I want you to run us through the numbers. But Natasha, your first impressions of what you've seen since you rocked up here in the early hours of this morning.
Dawie's projections have us completely gobsmacked. I personally never saw this coming. I thought the ANC would end or land in the upper 40s, maybe even early 50s. Such a massive percentage point drop is just, you're right, it's a complete recollaboration of our politics.
Dawie, you old dog, you. Run us through your numbers. I mean, it's been keeping us absolutely transfixed. I mean, when we saw it, all of us said to each other, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Tell us what the numbers have been telling you, and give us a rundown of the numbers from top to bottom, if you can remember them, or the headline numbers.
Yeah, look, I think when the night started last night, right, when those results started reporting, I started the night with sort of like 10 questions in my mind, and I won't go through all 10 of them, but lots of little questions, like how is the PA going to do in the rural, the Western Cape versus Cape Town? What are the turnout patterns going to be in various places? Will Rise and Mzansi have a huge impact in suburban Gauteng? All these kinds of things we were thinking about. But at the end of the day, like, all of those things contributed to this result in some way or another. But there's basically one massive variable which drove this entire election outcome, and it's MK and Jacob Zuma. And it's just unbelievable. Last night, when we were sitting here and KZN started reporting, I actually honestly refreshed my computer and checked the data connections maybe like 10 times with the IC, because I literally thought we were looking at incorrect data. I mean, there were voting stations coming in places like in Umzimkhulu, which is a deep rural place in southern KZN.
Yeah.
This is the sort of place where the ANC gets like 90% of the vote every election, all the time, extremely high turnout. It's like basically a religion to vote ANC down there. And we were getting like voting station after voting station with MK basically like halving the ANC in places like Umzimkhulu. In some places, MK winning like 75% of voting stations and the ANC down to 25. We're talking like a 50-point swing, right? It like just extraordinary numbers. And just one more thing, and KZN is 21% of the electorate, right? We'll see exactly where it ends up with turnout and so on. But that's firstly, that's a huge pocket of votes, just that alone. But then the other thing which we saw is that same pattern, slightly dampened, but also very powerful throughout all of southern Mpumalanga that we know is Zulu speaking, which is another like 2 million voters sitting down there, right? A million voters sitting down there. And into the Zulu speaking electorate in Gauteng, but I think a little bit of a surprise, not just Zulu speakers in Gauteng. The general kind of Gauteng electorate had a bit of an MK sport in it all over, right? So it just blew up. It blew up the KZN model. It blew up the Mpumalanga model, which we'll soon kind of release. It blew up the Gauteng model. So that is the driving force behind this entire result, and it's going to be fascinating to see what happens.
It's been a remarkable couple of hours, and we need to drill down into so much. There's so much to talk about, and we're not going to have enough time. I mean, the Zuma phenomenon we need to talk about. We need to talk about what it means for the EFF. They've been decimated in KZN as well. But for the benefit of the viewers, let's just quickly run through the numbers as you released it to us moments ago. The ANC, the governing party since 1994, that monolithic entity, Natasha, that we've been confronted with for 30 years, they've dropped, according to our model, Dawie's model, 15.2 percentage points to a total of 42.3. The DA, They've increased their support by a percentage point to 21.8%. And then the new kid on the block, 13.6% for Jacob Zuma and his MK party. I mean, that's the best performance of any party, certainly any ANC breakaway party, since the ANC had started losing, smaller formations in 2008. EFF dropped 1.8 percentage points to 9%. IFB stable on 3.8. The Patriotic Alliance, Gate and Mackenzie, 2.2%, an increase of 1. The Freedom Front Plus, they lost 0.9% of national support to drop to 1.5. And then the parties that really made a big fist of the DA support, really had a strong go at the DA. Action SA, Rise Mzansi, Bosa, respectively 1%, 0.4 and 0.3%. So Natasha, Dawie said, and you said we didn't expect this, and you said, the numbers are flabbergasting. Gwede Natasha was here moments ago, arrived at the Results Operational Centre, said, he's quite surprised by Jacob Zuma's party. Is he the only person at the Results Centre that is surprised by Jacob Zuma's performance in this election?
The ANC didn't seem to see this coming. They were convinced that their voters in eThekwini, for example, the metro voters would pitch up and vote, and that would shift the needle for the ANC. They rolled out their campaign for 7 solid days with the ANC National Executive Committee
They
on the
invested
ground.
time, money, everything in KZN.
Everything in KZN. The big problem that they experienced was their provincial leadership under Siboniso Duma was extremely weak in this campaign. And they didn't draw in big personalities into the campaign, such as former premiers like Willies Mqunu, former leaders that could go toe-to-toe with Jacob Zuma. So the internal dynamics of the ANC did contribute a little bit to this, but they are flabbergasted, as shocked as we were, I think, this morning.
Dawie, does this entail a collapse of ANC support? I mean, going from 57 to 42, that's a catastrophe for the governing party.
No, absolutely. And look, the ANC's vote has always been soft in KZN, right? Like, if you think back on Natasha was making this point in our discussions, I think you wrote a great piece on it already. Is the ANC historically was not strong in KZN, right? It was Jacob Zuma that pulled up the ANC in KZN. And I think, the post-Zuma ANC has struggled in KZN. It's been a soft vote. And you compare that with 30 years of governance, with 75% of the country thinking we're on the wrong track. It just amplifies the problems in KZN, so there was a particular vulnerability there. But, and I did belabor the point about it being like really an MK-driven election. But we should also not forget that in every other province, there was a swing against the ANC, right? Like we know, we often talk about how strong the ANC is in the Eastern Cape. Yes, again, they had a fantastic Eastern Cape result, which was 64%. But it was 5% less than last time.
And 5% is significant.
And there were 9 points down in the Western Cape. There were 5 points down in the Northern Cape. I can't recall the numbers now for the Free State, but I think they were down there as well. I think they were 8 points down in the Free State. So in all of the, and we haven't projected the actual number yet, but they're down big time in Gauteng. So which is MK, but also a bit other elements, right? So they were battling this kind of MK KZN problem where it was really amplified. And it's really attracting our attention because of that, right? But we should not forget that this was a bit of a national wave against the ANC across all the provinces. And we should also just say it explicitly, in the core ANC electorate, Black South Africans who have historically voted in extremely high rates for the ANC turned against the ANC in an unprecedented level on the 29th of May. And it just, I mean, I don't think we've thought through what that actually means.
No, it needs to sink in. I mean, we haven't yet really thought through all of it, and we need to try and internalize the enormity of this. Let's just also say that the projection that we have made is national to national.
Yes.
It excludes the regional ballot, Dawie.
Yes, correct. So just, I mean, full disclosure, it takes an enormous amount of computing power to do one of these models. So we wanted to get the national one out as quickly as possible. We'll do the regional one by tonight. And then we'll do a combined kind of projection. If the folks listening at home probably know that Parliament will be consisting of 400 seats, right? 200 of those roughly are constituted by the national ballot, the other 200 by the regional ballot. So you kind of need both parts, right, to get the full view of Parliament. But, we've obviously looked at the numbers. The two are highly correlated, so there won't be a huge difference once we add the two together.
Natasha, I just got a text from Gareth van Onselen, who was running some of the polling that tracked what was happening, and he said we should have just followed them. We wouldn't have been that gobsmacked. So yes, the trend has been that way, but it is remarkable to see it actually happening in front of your eyes on the results board, and with hard data coming through. How did was the ANC at all prepared for this? Did they, I mean, in your dealings with the ANC's leadership, how did they see this play out? I mean, what do you think is happening on the 6th floor of the Thule House at the moment?
You know, Pieter, I actually spoke to Gareth before we actually had ran his poll.
Yeah.
And you know, he told me about how they do it. And the reason I did that was because ANC leaders were saying to me, you know, this polling is a narrative.
Yeah.
It is wrong.
Yeah.
It is, you know, it's creating a shift against the ANC when the polling ends up being wrong. People are going to question the results. So there was this real, you know, a sense of denial, I think, in the ANC, looking at these polls and saying, well, no, that's never going to happen. But now we see that that's actually in the final results. That's actually what's happened. And you know, the ANC is a monolith in our politics. We can't imagine life outside of the ANC. At least my generation can't. So being the dominant force in our politics, and here we are.
In how much panic are they, do you think? I mean, from what we've heard, and we don't want to run ahead of ourselves too much, because we're going to have to think about and talk about coalitions a little later on today. Because, you know, if you look at the numbers as they stand at the moment, there really are only 3 coalition partners for the ANC. It's the DA, it's the EFF and MK party. So inside of the ANC, surely there's going to have to be some serious discussions and serious decisions being made within the next couple of days about where they want to go. But the shock of losing your majority, given that the party has been such an all-encompassing dominant force in our politics over the last 30 years, it's going to feel like they've lost limbs.
It's gonna have to sink in. I think especially when provinces like Mpumalanga, you know, 19 percentage points. It's just the ANC expected 80% in Mpumalanga. I'd love to see, you know, the reaction to the Free State. Excuse me, another 8 percentage points. So
I mean, we've spoken about KZN, but Mpumalanga you've mentioned as well.
Yeah.
That's a shocker as well for them, and we haven't yet.
We haven't released it yet. We're going to do
but let's talk about it. We might as well talk about it right now.
Sure. I mean, can I release the numbers?
Yes, go for it.
So look,
Dawie.
for the folks listening at home, like the Mpumalanga result is extraordinary. So as I said, it's being driven by southern Mpumalanga Zulu-speaking voters.
So close to the KZN border.
Exactly, but also close to the Gauteng border. There's quite Emelageni, all those towns are mostly Zulu-speaking, and those voters turned against the ANC massively. And so the projection that we have from Mpumalanga is 52%, which is, you know, the idea that the ANC could even be remotely close to 50% in Mpumalanga is like almost a ridiculous thought, right?
They were on 70.
They were on 70. I think they were on 71. We've got them at 52% projected, which is just mind-blowing, actually. And MK with a huge number, and I can't recall the exact number now, but with a significant number. I think it's 17 points, 17%. And that's, you know, that's you can do the math, right? 71 minus 17 gets them almost to the 52 we're putting them on, right? So it just shows the impact of MK there. Yeah, you're right. It's gonna really, I think, influence their politics. What happens internally in the ANC? It's going to be a huge question. I'm not an expert at that. I'm sure you guys can speculate about that smarter than I can. But the impact on just the coalition discussion, the impact on the financial markets and the rand.
We're already seeing the rand taking a pounding,
the
bonds
impact on
taking a
economic
pounding.
policies. It's an incredibly consequential election. And the other thing I just want to say is that I think at the end of 2021, there was a real window and discussion in opposition politics about whether the DA really was the right standard bearer for opposition voters in South Africa. Because, you know, like the DA did okay in 2021, but they kind of had a bad election.
Okay.
Action SA had a great election in Johannesburg. There was kind of this question about, like, what about a more diverse, different kind of party, which kind of then branched out into these 3 different options, right? BOSA, Arise, and Action. And I think they damaged themselves massively by not finding a way to collaborate. And, I mean, just disastrous results, right? So I think in the course of where opposition politics is going and the formation of something else that's not the ANC or not MK or not the EFF is the direction of where that is going is massively influenced by this election result, in addition to these other things that I was just saying. So, consequences like I can't believe. I think it's going to unbelievably consequential election.
Let's segue to the DA for a quick moment, and maybe you can open up the discussion on that. So it was a percentage point increase for them overall, according to our national to national projection as it stands at the moment. But they've also looks like they're going to keep Western Cape with a significant majority.
Yes.
Early days, but would you classify the election as a success for them, given the assault that they had to weather?
So look, I think there's a sort of shallow answer and a medium depth answer, and then there's the very deep answer. So the shallow and medium depth answer is this was actually a great success, right? Like they got hammered in 2021. Like we should not deny that. They had a terrible election in 2021. If you simulate those numbers on national government turnout, they're sub 20. So the fact that they made 20 and above is incredible with all these new competitors, with the environment that there was, etc. So like 2020, it's a fantastic result for them, honestly, and they deserve a lot of, I think, credit for it. They obviously worked their socks off. They fought on multiple angles. Like if you just think about it, they had to fight off coloured, they have to protect their flank with coloured voters in the Western Cape. Gayton McKenzie making a massive push, also the Northern Cape. They had to protect the suburban voters like Rise Mzansi, Action SA. They had to fight for black voters pretty much across the whole country from all of those alternatives, plus MK. Like, unbelievably difficult environment to go to 22. I think an exceptional result, to be honest. So that's the medium depth answer. But the deep answer is, the governing party, which has been governing for 30 years, and which is on a 75% wrong track number, has gone from 57 to 42, and the primary opposition party has gone from 21 to 22. So there's been a 15-point swing, of which they were able to capture one, right? So the fundamental question about the DA's ability to capture ANC vote as it declines has not been answered by this election result. Okay. And I think what has been answered.
In fact, it's probably affirmed the feeling that they are unable to do it.
Yeah, but the problem is it's also affirmed the DA's side of the argument, which is that these other little parties are kind of a waste of time and causing chaos. Right.
Yeah.
And I think. Honestly, I don't want to speculate on what the answer is. I'll let the parties fight this one out. But a plan needs to be made. That's all I'll say.
Natasha, similarly, if there's panic at the 6th floor at Lutuli House, how do you think the DA leadership might assess the projections and the results as they are coming in? Given the campaign and given as Dawie explained, they had to fight off attacks on them, on their voter base, on all fronts.
Look, I think the DA, they'd be unhappy with this result, especially its leader, John Steenhuisen. They were projecting something between 25 and 28%, even especially in provinces like Gauteng. So I think they would be disappointed with this result. I mean, if you cannot capitalize on an ANC that's declining by 19 by that significant vote, you're not a serious competitor. And the DA's argument is that it will be an anchor for future opposition politics in the country, but I don't think it can, because I mean, how can it anchor itself with the EFF and MK?
Exactly.
This is the difficulty the DA is going to face.
Which means, if you look at the four biggest parties at the moment, and if you consider the maths as they stand according to our numbers, if you need to get over 50, the ANC have three options, the smaller parties. But ideologically, will MK be willing to work together with the Ramaphosa ANC? We know they won't. We know Ramaphosa doesn't want to work together with a Malema EFF. Now you've got the Steenhuisen DA and the Ramaphosa ANC.
Sounds like a plan.
Possibly, so they're going to have to find common ground in the middle. But both of their supporting bases are going. Obviously there will be some opposition from their supporters for them to go into coalition with each other.
But I think we must just be realistic, right? Like, what will the markets do next week? What will the rand do next week? What will your property valuation do next week? If there is an ANC, EFF, MK coalition, right?
Yeah.
It is just...
It's a disaster.
No, exactly. It is just quantifiably, objectively, rationally, by far the best thing for the country, right? So I'm speaking from my perspective. I'm sure there are many voters who voted for the EFF and MK who say that's disgusting of him. Sure. But I'm speaking from my perspective, right? Yeah. It is the best thing for the country if you believe in a broadly market-driven perspective of the world. broadly liberal perspective of the world to have a DA-ANC coalition in this situation. So, country first, I think.
Yeah.
And there will be massive complexities with that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, remember the DA had big problems with the Freedom Front Plus in the last election. They hammered the Freedom Front Plus in this election, so well played on that one. But if they go into this ANC coalition, then there will be more complexity. So there will have to be a discussion about country first and how to manage that.
And you raise an interesting point. The DA's whole messaging in this election was, we don't want to see an ANC, EFF, MK
exactly.
coalition, and that's exactly where we're at.
Yeah, but I also think that they foresaw this eventuality, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
Yeah.
the whole discussion was like, we will do everything we can to have an alternative government, but if it doesn't work out, then we really want to avoid, an ANC, EFF, MK, and then they never really said what that actually meant. But I mean, it was very obvious what it actually meant,
yeah.
right? So I mean, we're here.
We'll probably move into that realm now, today and
Quickly.
tomorrow. We obviously still have to make a lot, try and figure out and understand what these results mean and what the fact means that the ANC are so low. But those conversations, those attempts to try and establish contact between the different parties, that will surely happen very quickly, won't it, Natasha?
It should start happening already.
I'm sure it's
I'm sure it's happening. I mean,
What do you know?
it should start happening already, because we have a very limited window period in which we have to form coalitions. Literally 14 days. So they better get cracking.
And the longer that we've got uncertainty around that,
Exactly.
the more difficult it's going to be for our markets, for the currency, for our bonds. The market doesn't like, Dawie, uncertainty.
And look, so in my other life, I work with some of our companies in South Africa, right? And just anecdotally, sense is a lot of people have been in wait and see mode about what is going to happen with this election.
Yeah.
And I think the sooner we just kind of land in one direction, like clearly, will be very good for major investment decisions, major employment decisions, for everything that is required to fuel economic growth, right? Because, I won't go into this in depth, but there is a minor window of opportunity now if load shedding really is getting better, if there is now this potential of a DA-ANC coalition. I think there's a window of opportunity for us from an economic perspective in South Africa. To be optimistic.
And the quicker we do it, the more certainty you'll get certainty much quicker. And it can only augur well if they can find an agreement as soon as they can. Natasha, to close out our conversation, which can go on for a long while still, just back to the ANC where we started. Jacob Zuma became leader of the ANC in 2007. He became head of state in 2009. It led us into a period of state capture, roughly between 2011 and 2018, when he was ousted. Is all of that now catching up with the ANC? Or was this more due to a Zulu traditionalist ethnic vote? Did ANC supporters turn away from the ANC because of the party's performance, or because they are strong supporters of an individual, of Zuma? A combination of both, perhaps.
Pieter, it's exactly that. It's a combination of both. The rejection of the ANC across other provinces is because of the excesses of the Zuma era.
Like in the Free State.
In the Free State,
like that.
in Gauteng
Gauteng.
especially.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the Zulu nationalist issue is quite strong in KZN, and that's coming to the fore. It's returning to a position it was at pre Jacob Zuma. But the ANC is also paying the price for allowing Jacob Zuma's excesses. It allowed it. It changed its character. It changed. It changed so much about what the ANC actually was, who the ANC actually was, in order to accommodate this very flawed leader, and it's paying the price.
And President Cyril Ramaphosa is someone that will probably have to answer for that as well. I mean, for so many years, he bent over backwards to accommodate Zuma. He bent over backwards to keep Zuma safe within the party, even outside of the party, and that's catching up with him as a leader and as on an individual level as well.
Absolutely, and what this result is going to do to the ANC internally is going to be fascinating to watch. You could have people pushing back at Cyril saying, you failed, you failed as president, look where we're at. But the difficulty the ANC has is who could replace him at this point in time, at this very precarious moment in its history, in its electoral state. Who could replace Cyril? That's the question.
Dawie?
And there's a real potential here for, in the medium term, for the bottom to truly fall out for the ANC.
Yeah.
Like, I think,
once it starts to accelerate.
Because apartheid is not going to come back next week or next year, no matter what happens. All of the worst kind of like fear-based arguments of the ANC are not going to realize in this situation that's just occurred now. Life is not going to get worse next week. So, I really think there's a chance that there could now be in the next election, in the next 2026 local government election. ANC is typically weaker in local government elections than in national government elections.
They were particularly weak last time around.
They just got clapped 42%, right? Like, I don't even want to rerun this model on national government election or local government election assumptions for what it means for 2 years from now, right? So there's real potential for things to now accelerate, and this is just, I just want to bring it back to the one point I made, is this is just why there is such a crucial point about who is going to be the party that can capture moderate ANC voters who don't want to vote ANC anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's
not the deal.
And the exact.
Well, it can't be MK either, can it?
No,
I mean,
it can't.
It's not MK.
But is it Action SA who's on 1%, or Rise who is on 0.4%, or BOSA who's on 0.3%?
Or a reformed ANC, Natasha? I mean, does Cyril have it in him to relaunch a new ANC, a new effort to reform and restore the ANC? Does he have it in himself to do it?
Well, he said himself he's not a dictator. He doesn't force people. He does things by consensus. And you have to come to a point where you have to make a decision, where you have to be a dictator as a leader, where you have to put your foot down. And this is that point. If this result doesn't send that message to the ANC and its leadership, I don't know what will.
Natasha, you spoke about some of the factions inside of the ANC and what might be happening. We know that the deputy president has had designs on the top job, ever since he was appointed deputy president. We know that Panyaza Lesufi is part of that in that environment as well. We know there's sometimes proximity to Jacob or Julius Malema as well. Do you see those factions starting to eye each other out, seize each other up, size each other up, trying to see what the weak points are, given the terrible result that still has to be declared, but is quite clearly on the cards?
I actually think that faction would be in trouble, Pieter, because what's very interesting about the KZN leadership, the provincial leadership, is they were not Zuma people. They were not the Zuma faction. Siboniso Duma, they were called the Taliban, and they were actually aligned more to Deputy President Paul Mashatile. And then we have Panyaza Lesufi and Lebogang Mahile, leaders like that in Gauteng, who are also aligned to Paul Mashatile. And those two provinces are the ones
that did the worst.
And those two provinces are the ones at most risk at this point.
So those factions are weakened as well, is what you're saying?
Those factions are massively weakened. So I think it would be very risky for the deputy president to push against the president at this stage, because that debate could be swung around against him and said, well, let's dissolve Gauteng and KZN, and then he doesn't have a base.
But with a result like this, everyone's weakened.
Yeah,
I mean, no single faction walks out of this smelling like roses, or no single faction possibly or probably is in a stronger position than the other faction, which throws things inside of the ANC into turmoil as well, and again brings us to those high levels of uncertainty that we certainly can't afford at the moment. If the DA did perform better than if they performed at around 24, 25, 26, which they expected, they would have had significantly more clout than they're going to have at 21, Dawie, which is from an opposition point of view unfortunate.
Yeah, look, of course. I mean, if the DA was able to get 24, 25, 26, 27, then that would be the answer to the question, right? Then it would be saying,
they've taken votes from the ANC as well.
We can be a catchment area. We can get moderate ANC people who are annoyed with the ANC. So for me, that is the fundamental question. Between now and 2026, which is 2 years away, which is a local government election, what is going to be put in place? What is going to be done that is different from what's been done now to engineer this?
Yeah.
Right? To get something that can actually, let's just call it the DA, to 28 or to 30 and to 32 in 2019 and 2029. Right?
Well, it's sorry to interrupt you, but it's you know, and we spoke and wrote a lot about the new parties, the upstarts. Bosa, Musi Maimane's party, Songezo Zibi's party, Rise Mzansi, Action SA, which you mentioned earlier, did so very well in the previous municipal election in Gauteng. But it doesn't seem like they were the catchment area either, guys. I mean,
exactly. No, that's the point, right? And so,
what do you do?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, rope in JZ and MK party. I mean, on a provincial level as well, what does this mean for provincial politics in KZN, Natasha? I mean, if MK is going to be the biggest party in the province, they're going to have to look, because they're not going to hit 50, it looks like.
And the longevity of MK is also going to be an interesting
Yeah,
question.
I mean, because if Jacob Zuma departs, shuffles off this mortal coil, which might happen, relatively in the future sometime, that would test that party as well. But as far as the provincial government and provincial dynamics are concerned, they're going to have to look for a coalition partner there as well, in and amongst the ANC, the IFP, and the DA too.
For me, I don't see an ANC MK tie-up.
Anyway.
I think an IFP MK tie-up would be complex for the IFP as well, because they've signed the multi-party charter and they're totally against an. I actually don't think they'll have the numbers to do an MK IFP. What do you think, Dawie?
We haven't released the projection officially. Let me know if we shall. But
we shall do that in print format.
Okay, fine. So, but basically, my reading of the numbers is that there's I would say there's three options. Option number one is MK and ANC. Okay, for KZN, that could work mathematically based on our internal projection at this point. Number two is MK and IFP. Okay, and then the other option is like ANC, DA, IFP.
Look, it's becoming clear. It's not clear.
Those are the three, I think. So,
guys, things are tending towards a place where we're going to have to say that the most logical tie-up is ANC-DA.
And by the way, then there's also implications for stabilizing the metros, right? Which is something that's desperately required.
Yes.
Stabilizing all of these provincial governments that are now going to be in Hung territory. So the agreement between ANC and DA could be much more far-reaching than just whatever happens in Parliament.
Can I throw a spanner into these works?
Please do.
Big one.
So the Zuma people and the EFF people, this was their plan. They were like, well, we're going to push Cyril to a point where he has to go into a coalition with the DA, and then say, see, this we told you.
WMC.
We told you. Yes, it's that narrative. It's the Bell Pottinger narrative, refashioned to influence factions. Whether or not it'll work, I think people see past those narratives. I think, I think it would be, numbers make sense. Yeah. And if the DA and the ANC and IFP make sense in KZN, then...
But guys, and Natasha, I'll throw this to you. A tie-up with the ANC for the DA holds its own dangers.
Of course.
Because now
absolutely.
for argument's sake, you're going to an informal or a formal coalition with the ANC at national level. Yeah. You're going to be tied to a governing party's record that has been misfiring and has been in charge of misrule for the last 15, 20 years. Yeah. What are they going to do? Are they going to take certain departments, certain portfolios? Will they have the budget to do what needs to be done? Will they have the ability to make the appointment that needs to be done? And then, it's going to be very difficult to separate a coalition partner's performance in one department or portfolio from the overall government's performance, won't it? So there will be dragons in that tie-up as well.
Yes, if we get there, I think
country
they're going to have
duty
to,
and all, like you said, Dawie,
but they're going to have to negotiate quite carefully. It's going to have to be. I think Peter Carol Payton, our colleague, was right when
sitting
she said,
in the corner ignoring us.
When she said we are in potentially GNU territory here, Government of National Unity.
Dawie?
Or we're potentially in kind of supply and confidence arrangement territory, right?
Yeah,
Where I don't think that'll be good for the country, to be honest, given the fragility of the situation.
Yeah, explain that.
So being in a situation where let's say the ANC gets what we project, which is 42, and they don't form any coalition with anyone, and they govern as a party with 42% of the vote,
A minority government.
and they take every issue to the floor of Parliament. And say, all right, guys, this is the budget for this year.
Yeah,
Let's have a debate and vote on it, right? That could work, right? That's a theoretical possibility. But I just think
It could be bogged down
It'll be
in.
bogged down.
yeah, exactly. So, but the point is, I'm just saying that's the other alternative, right?
Yeah.
Or an ANC MK ANC EFF situation, or an ANC DA situation, right? Like these are the routes, and I think probably in this arrangement where they're working together, there has to be some sort of Chinese wall arrangement between your department and mine, and friendly fire is allowed.
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
there's
yeah.
because it's going to be
It's gonna be
imperative.
absolutely ironclad,
It's going to be imperative for both to be able to express hatred towards each
Yeah,
other.
yeah, but
right?
they're going to have
Like-
to. They're going to have to decide on a set of rules of engagement that everyone can agree on.
But I do think we are in ANC EFF territory more than we are in ANC DA territory.
You think so, Natasha?
Yeah, well, from an ANC NEC level, it's a majority Ramaphosa aligned NEC, so the appetite wouldn't necessarily be there. But we must remember that this NEC allowed Ekurhuleni in Johannesburg, despite taking a
Yes.
firm decision to say they have taken a decision that says the ANC must get out of the working arrangement with the coalition with
Yeah.
the EFF in Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg. They have done nothing when the ANC in Gauteng refused to comply with that directive. So I think that was a bit of an experiment for
Yeah.
the National Executive
Yeah.
Committee,
Yeah.
looking at whether this could work. Dipping their toe in the water a little bit, and perhaps what we'll see going forward is whether they jump in completely.
Well, the president, as the leader of the ANC, is going to have to make some firm and clear decisions very soon. And I think I'd argue that he's going to have to show some backbone and gumption that he hasn't shown up until now. So it's going to be fascinating to see. Dawie, Scholtz, thank you.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Natasha, Marrian, thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back soon, tonight somewhere, with some more fascinating insights from the National Results Centre at Gallagher Estate in Midrand in the Republic of South Africa.